I just want to welcome everybody here today. Today we are here to look at mastering the CIF strategies through technology integration. My name is Debbie Pingle and I have Marco Torres with me today. We are both technology integration specialists. I work with elementary, Marco works with middle school. And so hopefully some of the ideas we share today will help you use technology and integrate that with the CIF strategies. Please keep your mics muted for the session today, but feel free to type questions in the chat. And at the end, or as we're going through, we'll try to answer those questions. And then at the very end of the presentation, if you do want to open up the mics later on, we can do that as well. If you are not registered on the PD system, please do that. The session number is 300-240. And we did put the link to that session in the chat. Remember also to do the remote check-in. That code is PSJA Tech for the PD system. And if you go to that same link that's in the chat, you'll be able to do your remote check-in there. We want to make sure that you qualify for the door prizes at the end. You do have to be present to win a door prize. So please stick around right after the session. We'll do it as quick as possible so we can get you home tonight. So this is just a list of some digital collaboration tools that would lend itself for technology integration and the CIF strategies. And we're going to cover some of those today. You're going to see Google Forms, you're going to see Google Docs today, Canva, Adobe Express, Padlet, Kami, Classroom Screen, and all these tools are free. Now, if you notice the Padlet, the Kami, Classroom Screen, there's a free version that you can use in those, but a lot of the other ones are found right in our Microsoft apps. So if you're in your myapplications.microsoft.com, all your apps, we have a lot of those apps here, Adobe Express, Canva. Our theme this year was create. And we do want to see students creating using these tools. So I'm going to turn it over to Marco so he can start right away with writing to learn.
Alrighty. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for the nice little introduction of what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be going over writing to learn strategy first, but like Debbie said, I want to emphasize that we're going to show you, I think, one of the main points for this meeting here today on this PD is we're going to show you what's capable, what these programs are capable of doing as far as achieving CIF strategies. So the first one we're going to talk about is writing to learn. So what is writing to learn? So writing to learn is really low stakes writing. And so what does low stakes writing mean? It means that you're focusing on what the student is, the content of what the student is writing, rather than their actual grammar, their punctuation and whatnot. You are just looking for, does the student understand the content that I am teaching them? So some of the strategies that we're already familiar with are entry and exit tickets. There's also brainstorming activities, and then there's also something I really like called what ifs, which are your highest order of thinking when it comes to writing how to learn. So let me show you what that looks like. I know most of the people in this room are very familiar with Canva. Are very familiar with Nearpod. So if you want to try something new that you can try is actually Padlet. So Padlet is very much like the collaborative board for Nearpod, but it is a little different. Let me see if I can get to that. So right here, you see that this is my exit ticket. And I know we're all familiar with exit tickets and entry tickets, but there's a particular strategy within CIF so that we're always having the students engaged. We want them to be active learners and not passive learners. So when you do a Padlet or an exit ticket within Padlet, what you're doing is you're giving everybody a voice. And I know that we're all familiar with that. So in this instance right here, it's really good to not only have a Padlet open, but if you all have a timer of some kind, maybe through a classroom screen, which I'm about to show you in a little bit, it's always good to actually give them a time limit for when they do these entry and exit tickets. And the reason, what you can see here, I'm talking about low stakes writing, is that it gives the students a voice, and you can tell by these different responses where your students are at. For the question, it says, what were the hardships for the passengers of the Mayflower hardships did they face when they landed in Massachusetts. So you would have a student that, maybe either they weren't focused the entire time or they just couldn't grasp what they were learning that day, so they'll just put food, and you see that their knowledge wasn't super in depth. But then you can see that there's a couple of students who understood the content a little bit better, and then you can see where they're at just by comparing not so much the grammar and everything like that I said earlier, but it's really what was the content? Is it there? And once you work on your low stakes writing long enough, it actually improves your high stakes writing, because they're just used to the fact that they're just continuously writing and writing and writing, and then it becomes second nature, and then they ultimately get better as the year progresses. So this is one way that you can do some low stakes learning. I'm going to go ahead and show you another strategy. Another low stakes strategy that we can implement here is, if you go onto Google Docs, you can have the students, you can ask them a question and make sure that the students share the document with one another. So one of my favorite assignments when I was still teaching is called what if assignments. This is really high order thinking. This is something that might have not happened in history, but it could have happened. So the question we put here is, what if Columbus had landed on the western coast of the United States? So as long as we have, you can see as I'm talking, Debbie is typing, because right here we go to my share. It's me and Debbie are the ones that are collaborating together. So having a collaboration is another great CIF strategy that is low stakes. Have the students pair up in no more than 4, and they can work on, somebody can work on an introduction, the body, and another student on the conclusion. So that's another strategy that we can implement when we're talking about running to learn. Let me go back to my presentation really quick. Oh, last but not least, we also have Google Forms. That one's a really good one, because if you want to have the students practice their writing, and it's low stakes, but you want them to get prepared for the STAR 2.0 test, a really good entry exit ticket and short response is a Google form. The reason why I like it is because if you create the same question I put in Padlet, you can actually change the response validation. So if it's a short response question, you can put 675 characters, which I believe is the new limit. I could be wrong, but I think it's 675 characters. And then if you want to make them do the long response, you can change it to, I believe it's like 1750. So those are just good ways to have the students write. My last bit of advice. So right now we have Google Docs, you can use Google Forms, and you can use Padlet, all in different ways to encourage writing to learn. And one of the strategies that that we've been taught when doing writing to learn is, if you can have the teacher implement a low stakes writing activity every 10 to 12 minutes, because what that does is you're constantly making the students active learners and they're not passive learners. You don't give the students that capability of, oh, well, I hope I don't get called on, and I hope they call on Debbie, and then Debbie's doing the learning, but I'm just glad they didn't pick me. So these kind of exercises that you just saw have students participating in writing throughout the entirety of the lesson. So as far as writing to learn, that's what I got. And I'm going to talk about one more strategy before I pass it back to Debbie. Let me know if there's any questions on what we've gone through so far. So let me go on to classroom talk / collaboration. This is where we can check for learning through the ability to articulate understanding and others' points of view. So not only is it a collaboration, say, for example, between me and Debbie, but I'm learning how Debbie's thought process is. I'm wondering, did she and I learn the same exact way? What's her point of view on something that we learned, and what's mine? So there's a couple of really good ways to do this. If you use tools like Classroom Screen, which I'm going to show you right now, and Nearpod's collaborative board, those are really good ways to get students collaborating in the classroom. And then the whole purpose of this is they're talking with one another. So we ask them a question, they talk amongst each other, and as they grow in their strength in communicating with one another, then the goal is to ultimately be able to have academic discussion within the entire classroom. You go from talking to one person every single day to talking to more people, and then eventually it becomes like a whole class activity. Right before I show you what I'm gonna do, a really good thing would be to have sentence stems and word walls and talk about the vocabulary before you start this assignment, just so that you can hear that the students are talking academically. So let me show you what we did over here in Classroom Screen. What we ended up doing is, if you're not familiar, this is a great app. It's free. You can make up to three different tabs where they have an assortment of tools like a poll question, a name randomizer, a clock, a timer. So what we did here was I asked the question. I'm going to ask a poll question. What is the most important branch of government? So I put on here, I believe I can see if I could still edit it. Don't think I can edit it anymore. So what I did here was I put, what is the most important branch of government? And as a teacher, this function right here, you can block the results and people seeing who answered what. So have the students answer this question, answer this poll question, and before you show the results, have them turn to a shoulder partner and have them talk to each other and say, hey, well, which one did you pick and which one did you pick? And then they can have a nice discussion about it. Then you can go over, then you can show the results of what the class chose, and then go from there. So that's another really good strategy as far as when it comes to collaborative talk. It's having an activity like this where a student gets a choice, but before you make it into a classroom discussion, have students go to a shoulder partner or in a group no bigger than 4 and then go from there. Classroom Screen is also really good because it does have a timer, and it's always good to have a timer for pretty much every activity that we're running in the classroom. So that's gonna be my cue to hand it over to Debbie. And so if anybody has any questions on Classroom Talk or Learn to Write, feel free to put in the chat. Oh, hey, Debbie, you're muted.
Thank you. I seem to do that once in a great while. Thanks, Marco. I like the Classroom Screen tool, and the timer is real nice. Another timer I was thinking of before I get started here is you can just go to YouTube timers and you can find like a lot of timers out there have music and stuff. So and I'm sure there's lots of other timers, out there, but good tools. And the next CIF strategy we're going to look at is questioning. So questioning is a skill that is very important. It starts with, the teacher asking questions and modeling, and you want to get the students curious and asking their own questions. And so that's kind of like the end goal, is getting those students to ask good questions. So you need to start with that teacher modeling and then build up to that, and have students start practicing. So a couple of the tools I thought of to use today were Canva and also Microsoft or Google Forms. I did do a Google form, but if you're more familiar with Microsoft, they're very similar. They do the same thing. So actually students can create their own questions and their own little like survey questions where they can actually ask their fellow students. So I thought that would be kind of neat to have them experience some of these tools and create their own questions that way. So in Canva, I'll get to the forms next. In Canva, I was looking through the protocols, and one of them was a brainstorming carousel activity. And I thought, well, this activity would also be good to ask questions about some of the content that teachers have, especially with the Newsella stories. I think those are like, very nice, or current topics or relevant topics to the students, and they're in your curriculum already. I took this one from a 3rd grade for the 3rd 6 weeks. This is one of the activities, the Selma to Montgomery March. So in this Canva activity, the teacher it's already created, so you're welcome to use this template if you like it. A carousel is like where you kind of course, circle around. So in this activity, you're getting the students grouped into groups of 4 or less. You don't want to get too big groups. And then depending on the number of groups you have, that's how many questions you want to have. You want to have at least one for each group. And here you're going to give each group a color, because I don't know, maybe high school kids, not as much, but elementary students will love the technology and they'll get on there. They're going to be able to change their text to the color. They can even change the font if they want to. So here we actually will have a slide with the questions. And so I just did like 6 groups, and I did put one that would be a finished one. So there's just a, one question on each slide. And so I can actually share this slide with my students so they can get on, and in real time they can edit. So let's pretend that each group has gotten on, they've answered the question. You can see they changed the font a little bit. That kids might be a little more crazy than me. I just kept it kind of simple. But now when they get back to their original slide, and you're going to give them about 3 to 4 minutes in between each one to answer that question. Whatever time you feel is enough for them to get that answered. And then they're going to be rotating to the other slides. Now, there's nothing to say they can't be on, stay on the slide a little bit longer or not. That's just something you're going to have to monitor, because there's not something that will block them from going back and forth on the slides here. But at the end, when they come back to their group, now they can do a little bit of classroom talk in the questioning part here, and they can bring the little star and star the ones that they thought were like the best answers. So that just gives them some flexibility. Then they can share out with the whole group, what the favorite question was. So that's just like a little carousel activity. And you can do this on paper and pencil around the room, but this is just changing it up and doing it digital. So we will share the slides with you. And so I do have the link for mine actually to get on, the collaborate one. And then I do have the template as well. That's something that you'd be interested in having and modifying, of course, making it your own. Okay, then we have student. Let's get down that this teacher can model a little bit on those questions, talk about, how to make it a better question. And in the book, the not so little itty bitty book of the CIF. And I always want to say itsy bitsy instead of itty bitty. But anyway, it has on page 54 the Bloom's taxonomy, and it has a lot of question stems. So these are awesome. I used to use some question stems way back when I was teaching in the classroom to help get those higher level questions. And the students will start to get more familiar with that as well. But share this with them, have it up in your room, or at least give them some of them so they have that. This is a 4th grade passage on the very peculiar platypus, and it is a non-fiction text. And so the students here, you could have them work in groups. They could read the text, and then they could make a Google form or a Microsoft form. Here we did a Google form, and just have them create their own questions. And then they can share, maybe pair them up with another group, and group 1 will share with group 2, group 3 with 4, and they'll share their Google form and answer those questions. So they can kind of get that ownership of writing good questions and then sharing them with their fellow students. So that's another tool they can use. And this is just kind of this is the working form of what it would look like. They can come in and they can do multiple choice questions if they choose. They can do open-ended questions, whatever kind of question they want to ask. So I like the open-ended kind with the question stems as well. So that is a little bit on what you could do with questioning. So I'm going to turn it back over to Marco to go over scaffolding. If you have any questions, let us know in the chat. And Marco, you're on mute now.
It gets even the best of us here. That was an awesome carousel activity that you showed. It's kind of, I was imagining it kind of like a techie, what do they call it? A gallery walk, right? Gallery walk. So it's like a techie gallery walk. So
yep.
Pretty cool. I'm going to go over a couple of scaffolding tools and sites that y'all can go to help students out. So scaffolding, it's to explain scaffolding. You could be here for a little while, but essentially what you want to do is break down complex concepts into smaller, manageable chunks. So what we're doing is we're chunking it, and we do it by using a lot of visuals like graphic organizers. But what we also do when we're scaffolding in terms of for the example of, well, I know my students know that there's branches of government, but now they know that there's three of them, but now how can I get my students to know what each branch does? So what we want to do also is use real world examples and connections to make learning relevant. And we want to see what kind of knowledge they had beforehand and get them to how were they able to make those connections with the new information that they got. So what you're seeing right here on my screen is this is a snippet of Cami. So if you're asking, hey, where'd Marco go? How did he get there? I have a tab open. Cami is free for us. We did have it for a year last year, the premium version, but still, you still get a lot of the same similar functions, especially if you're in secondary in here and you use DocHub a lot. Yeah, you can still access Cami, and it has a lot of good features on there. So once you're in Cami, you'll sign in with your Google PSJA credentials, and you will go to Browse Templates. So a good thing that you can do here is actually on the left-hand side, you can go ahead and go to Graphic Organizers, and you can go to Worksheets, and then they have items to help with the scaffolding. So I like this one, the hamburger writing template, where it has a topic sentence, and then it has details, and then it has a conclusion. They of course have like Venn diagrams, so this is really good for scaffolding as well, to see what is it that the students previously know and what are we going to build on today. They do have more graphic organizers. So what you're going to do here is you can either open it with Cami and send the link to your Google Classroom, or you can download it as I believe it's a PDF, and then you can also put that onto your Google Classroom. Again, everything is free. You don't have to pay for the premium Cami to get all of this good stuff. So that's one that I wanted to show you. Oh, and a really good one too, for your model, you can use this so that students can still do the definition, using it in a sentence. But then what I really like about doing this online is that they can look for a photo. I was never a good drawer, so for me to find a picture of what a word means is way better now than me having to draw it, because most of the time people didn't know what I was drawing because I'm that bad at it. So these are really good tools that you can use for your scaffolding. And then a real popular one too, if you ever have time, check out these interactive notebooks. They're really cool. If you're gonna do I think they go up to 20 pages per notebook. So it's pretty cool if you're gonna do it by unit. Let me show you also, we do have some similar stuff here on Newsela. I love Newsela. We have it for the middle school and the elementary right now, but if you're a middle school or elementary teacher or coordinator, feel free to go onto where once you press search, you can go to content types and look for worksheets. So same thing, I'm going to bring this over. These are some of you don't have to use this for Newsela also. See, so you can do key terms with prediction, definition, and drawing, and see using it in a sentence. The good thing about this is you don't have to print it out. Like I said, download it, put it into your Google Classroom, and then even if to get through this drawing part, you can have them find images on Google Image Search, and then they can put those on there as well. So they have this, they have a central idea note taker, they have facts, and then evidence and conclusion. So not only is it important when scaffolding to have a graphic organizer so that they can keep their thoughts, like in a easy to go to place. It's really important that they can also, that you can relate this to real world context. So the good thing about Newsela, and I know high schools use Actively Learn, they're two really good programs. Good thing about both of them is they are current events for different types of subjects. So for example, if we're learning about Thanksgiving today in the classroom, the history of Thanksgiving, you can, they'll have not only historical articles, but they'll have some that you can relate to for today. So these are really good activities and really good applications to use for scaffolding. I believe that's all I got for this part. So let me go back to you, Debbie.
All right, for the last one, we'll try to get you out of here before 5. So our last topic is the literacy groups, and we didn't do collaborative group work, but literacy group kind of lends itself to that as well. And so in the literacy groups, I thought let's try to create again using Adobe Express. I found in that not so little itty bitty book under the literacy groups, the first activity was called information cubes. And this was actually, of course, using paper to make a cube. And each person, like in a literacy group, as you know, there are different roles that the students play. So in this one, they had a data digger, the illustrator, the questioner, the summarizer, and the word warden. And it gave a task there, and it explains the task for each person. So instead of doing it on paper and designing a cube, which is a good activity as it is, to turn it digital, I thought let's use Adobe Express. And so I just chose a news article, and this was from 5th grade content for the third 6 weeks. I can't remember which week it was, but there was a new tree frog discovered, and there's an article here. Again, it is a nonfiction text, and so literacy group, of course, is getting students to get more out of the text as they read. And so I thought you can have the students create a video, a web page, an infographic, presentation, graphic organizer, a flyer, a report, an online newsletter. I thought, let's give the student the choice of what they want to create. So this way, each group might have a different project, or they might have the same similar, type of project. And so each person in that role will add to part of whatever project they choose. So what I did is I just did a sample web page. So each role, and I just put the literacy group, and of course you can give directions on what you want them to title it. This was group 1. I cannot pronounce the name of this new tree frog. So if anybody wants to try, go right ahead. Here was the data digger, and they were to discover, the facts about what was happening in that selection. So they came up with some facts there and some information. And the illustrator was to illustrate. Now, for me, I just chose a graphic, of course, that I found online for this new tree frog. But the student could actually also do an illustration and take a photo of it and then upload the photo here. There's a lot of different things. They could use Google Draw, try to draw that way and illustrate something and bring it in. As long as you have it saved, on your device, you can bring in that image. So that's something they could do. The questionnaire was to come up with questions about the content. And so just put the questions there. And then we had the summarizer, of course, was to make a summary. And the word warden was to choose 5 words that were maybe not as common and define those words. So instead of just having a cube, they have their project and their product, and then now they can share with the class their little website that they did. So I think it's good to give student choice. Now, of course, there is some learning process of how, you're going to have to teach them a little bit ahead of time how to use that Adobe Express, that. So that's a little bit of a learning curve for that, and maybe for yourself, but it is fairly simple. And students are amazing. They pick up things quickly. They're going to not be afraid to click on all the tools, and they'll be designing better projects than we are designing, just by clicking everywhere. And they're not afraid. They're not afraid to explore. So let's let them explore, and let's let them be creative and create those neat looking projects. And it's great to use paper and pencil, but it's also great just to, step it up a little bit and use these tools. We have students with devices now. Every student has a device. Let's get them using them and creating. So does anybody have any questions?
No questions in the chat.
Okay. Well, we do have another session this week. Our unmute and recharge for secondary is Thursday at 3:45. And then when we come back from Thanksgiving, we have some other sessions. I am going to share these slides with you. At any time, you can go to our instructional technology webpage. We do have some tech information there. We have an instructional tech YouTube channel. We have lots of video recordings on trainings that are already there. We also have Instagram, Facebook, and X, so you can follow us on those.